In front of our friends, I told him to let the real men to do the barbecue. He stood up and did this.
Not all best friends should get married because it might just end in disaster. Why? Because I don't think it sounds normal that a single statement is about to ruin my marriage at all. I told my husband to step back and let the real men present do the grilling, and he got so angry that he decided to do something very hurtful to me. I know it all sounds wild, and you all need an explanation, but I swear that I'm also confused with the current events. My name is Laura, and I'm a 29 years old event planner and wife. I just got married about 2 years ago to my best friend, my husband. His name is Tristan, and he's 30 years old. Tristan and I became best friends instantly. Like from the moment we met 5 years ago, we became friends instantly. Tristan and I started off as friends, and our friendship was so real and fun that we became best friends instantly. I never imagined that there would be anything more than friendship between us. I know it sounds surreal, but yes, that's actually the truth. I was so comfortable with our friendship and the dynamics that I just never imagined we would date, and I can say the same for Tristan. Tristan and I were there for each other through the lowest lows. He was someone I could always run to no matter what, and vice versa. I'm sure you all can get an idea of how compatible we were as friends now. I swear that our friendship was the best thing that happened to me, and it seemed like that was the case for him. Of course, you would expect that with that level of closeness and compatibility, even the people around us began to take note. Our mutual friends and family watched us for months and months before they decided to give us a push. What push, you might want to ask? Well, I mean a push to date. People around us felt that with such great friendship, we would have a greater romantic relationship, and that it was only right for us to date. You remember when I said we made no move to be in a romantic relationship, right? Well, people around us noticed that too, and that's why they decided to get us into a relationship. At the beginning of my friendship with Tristan, I even had a boyfriend. Like, things were serious and Tristan was seeing other people too. He wasn't in a committed relationship at that point though, because he had just broken up with his longtime girlfriend. But months after our friendship, I was single again, and so was Tristan. But I swear that nothing ever happened between us, but even a kiss. But when people close to us started setting us up and leaving the two of us at restaurants so they could give us privacy, something started brewing up. Previously, we'd always been with our other friends and barely spent much time alone. But when they started setting us up intentionally, that closeness was inevitable, and so we started drawing closer to each other. Now that I look back at that moment, I can say that I regret giving in to that temptation. I'm sure Tristan does too, because we really tried to not overstep the boundaries, but seeing that everyone else was rooting for us to get together and people were telling us we'd make a power couple, we had no choice but to let our guests down. Funny thing about life, right? We like to pretend like other people do not influence our life choices and decisions, but that is only a lie we tell ourselves. Whether we like it or not, most of our life decisions are influenced by other people. Same thing happened with Tristan and I. We made a bold step that ultimately ruined our friendship. Ruined. I use the word ruined Reddit, but stay with me. I know you all must be confused. I mean, I would be too. The question is, how did our friendship get ruined? Isn't it ultimately supposed to get better? That's what everyone expected, and to be honest, that's what we expected too. But the truth is, not every compatible friendship would be a compatible relationship. I know some people say a boy and girl can never be just best friends. This is an ideology that many people have, but my friendship and marriage with Tristan has taught me otherwise. Not every friendship must turn to a romantic relationship. Some people are just meant to stay friends forever, while others can hook up once or twice, but a real healthy relationship can never come out of it. Not to divert, but I know what I'm saying, so think twice before you make that decision. When you are not compatible with someone, even the tiniest things can get on your nerves, like you can flare up just by a word of two that comes out of the person's mouth. The same thing has been going on in my marriage with Tristan. In fact, the sake thing caused the end of our marriage and brought us here to begin with. I mean, if anyone would have told me I would be on Reddit, recounting how my marriage literally fell apart in just 2 years, I would have laughed in their face and called it bull*T. But here I am, sitting in front of my computer at 2 a.m., back in my parents' house instead of being with my husband. Sorry for the deviation. I just needed to point out some very important information so you all can understand the dynamics of my marriage. So like I had pointed out, Tristan and I eventually gave in to the temptation even though we tried our best to resist. We started spending more time together, going on romantic dates, kissing, and then boom, we did everything couples did. Barely 6 months after dating, he proposed. I said yes because at that point, I had no reason to refuse. Our friends and family even felt like we took too much time. Everyone believed we were a perfect match, so of course we believed that was true. Crazy, right? I can already imagine some of you frowning at your screens and asking, weren't they why red flags? I mean, that's what people always say when a relationship goes south. They blame the couples for ignoring the red flags. But the thing about relationships and love in particular is that the red flags look like green flags until it's too late. You only see what you want to see, and that's fine because it's not your fault. I am going to say this even though I might get a lot of backlash for it. I did not love my husband. Yes, I said it, sue me if you want to buy. Please let me explain myself first. When I say I did not love him, I mean romantically. I did love him as a best friend and a companion. I saw him as a person that I could always count on to make me laugh and vice versa. But we were rushed into something none of us prepared for. I mean, just 6 months of dating romantically, and we were married. We weren't even given time to process it. Of course nothing seemed wrong. No arguments and no cheating. How could they be? We were best friends. He knew what made me happy, and so did I. Most of the time we spent together was filled with what we did as friends, more than what couples were expected to do. But all these went downhill the moment we tied the knot. Oh my God, you guys cannot imagine how much of a rocky marriage Tristan and I have had. We knew each other as friends, but we spent the whole 2 years of our marriage trying to know each other as romantic partners. I don't know what went wrong on his end completely, but I can give account for what I felt went wrong according to my own perspective. There was just too much judgment in the marriage, and that made her sick to my bones. First of all, we never spoke about personal life before tying the knot. We didn't even get time to ask each other what life as a couple would mean, how many kids he wanted, and vice versa. We never got to have those important conversations, and that was a huge problem in our marriage. I hated the fact that we didn't have a lot of things in common when it came to planning our future together. After getting married, the both of us instantly had a wake-up call. Like we got the biggest wake-up call of our lives. We had to start speaking about things we ignored prior to marriage, and damn, it was hard. I began to see that the man I married wasn't really the man I wanted to stay married to. You know the thing about friendships where you never care to judge your friends, right? I'm sure most of you would understand what I mean. When we have friends, we like to tiptoe around the truth and support them in situations regardless of their fault in it. I know I do that a lot. I like to stick by my friends and I do not judge them. But that's different in marriage. You need to point out things you do not want. For example, I realized that I didn't like how friendly Tristan was. Yes, that sounds crazy, but it's the truth. I hate how friendly he is with passion, like the fact that he never listened to me when I told him to stop talking to our other female friends. I'm not a jealous woman for wanting that, I just didn't like that at all. I also hated the fact that his finances weren't exactly where I wanted them to be. I like to refer to myself as a soft girl and a woman who likes luxurious life. I am not apologetic about pricey things at all. I have a love for the finer things of life, and I wanted to be able to afford whatever I want. I am an event planner and Tristan works at the bank. He earned 4 times higher than me, but that still doesn't place him on the pedestal I want him in. After our marriage, I instantly realized that I wanted a richer man. When we were just best friends, I didn't give a hell about his finances. I knew he had enough money and he gave me gifts when needed, but I never cared that much. But when we got married, it dawned on me that Tristan was rich enough to have a nice car and house, but not rich enough to take me on expensive trips several times in a year or get me my favorite designer items. I also noticed that he wasn't rich enough to place me on a monthly allowance, and that was a big problem. Don't misunderstand me, please. I'm not trying to say Tristan is poor. In fact, he is very far from poor. He earns enough, but not enough to get me a $2,000 bag. Like, do you understand what I mean now? He earns enough, but just not enough to give him $1,000 for shoes. So that's what I do not like. I love luxury and everything that has to do with it. I want to be able to go shopping without having to check the price tag, and I want to be able to afford as many Birkins as I want. But with Tristan, It all just felt like a silly dream that was never going to come true. Right from my childhood, I'd always imagined getting married to a filthy. It wasn't just my childhood fantasies, it was something I looked forward to making reality. But after getting rushed into marriage all of a sudden, I soon realized that the man I married wasn't filthy rich, and that made him judge him so much. In fact, it got me irritated. On top of him not being filthy rich, Tristan is annoyingly obsessed with saving for the future. Like, what freaking future are you saving for if your wife is not happy in the present? Like, dies that even make sense. There was this time he got a fat paycheck after a particular job he did for his boss. After that, I decided to ask him for some money to go shopping. I asked for a reasonable amount, but he only gave me half of the requested sum. According to him, we needed to save for the future since he wasn't sure more special requests would come and didn't want to spend too much. He told me I already had enough clothes and that half of the money I requested had to be enough for what I asked. That really got on my nerves. Sometimes when I asked him to list the things he was saving for, he would talk about our children's tuition and whatnot. For God's sake, what children was he talking about? I had to keep asking myself this because I knew I had no plans of having children yet. If possible, I don't even want children, so it was baffling to think that he wanted children and was already saving up for their future. How could you save your money for children that weren't here yet when their mother was in need of the money? Fine, he would argue that there was food at home and that I had everything I wanted. He would buy me gifts and take me to dinners and parties weekly, but I just needed that fast, expensive life. A life that wouldn't cost me anything if I woke up one morning and decided to stop working. But in the long run, I discovered that wasn't going to be the case in my marriage. There was just no compatibility in our personalities or vision. Tristan is more reserved, intentional, and was extra careful with money management. I am the exact opposite, and I believe in living in the moment and forgetting about the consequences. There was just no excitement. Yes, I believe that our marriage has less excitement than our friendship did, and I hated that. The thrill just wasn't there, and soon enough, I started regretting the marriage. I didn't find Tristan's desire to plan finances sexy at all. I wanted a man that could afford to make financial decisions as recklessly as he wanted, and yet he wouldn't go broke. Tristan wasn't that man, and that was another reason to regret marrying him. Oh my goodness, our friendship has literally disappeared. Things just went sour, and what made me more upset was the fact that Tristan tried to pin the negatives on me. At some point, it was visible to the both of us that our marriage just wasn't working, so we decided to have a talk. Well, Tristan was the one who proposed we had the meeting. At first, I wanted to refuse because I was extremely afraid of confrontation. A part of me just knew that he would bring up my reckless demands, and I hated that. I tried my best to run away from the meeting, but Tristan put his foot down and told me that it was non-negotiable, and they had to have the talk urgently. I finally gave in to his demands and decided to see him so we could talk things out. Tristan first of all made it clear that he hated the fact that our friendship had suffered a great deal since our marriage. I thought we would grow stronger and our friendship would shine even more, but it seems like things went the other way. Those were his exact words when he spoke to me. I still remember it like it was yesterday because honestly, those words really pierced my heart. He asked me to list out the things I had issues with and why my attitude towards him had changed. I didn't waste any time after that. I hate the fact that you would rather save for the future than say yes to my demands as your wife. I also hate that you barely have any regard for my personal preferences, like partying and purchasing luxurious items. Those were some of the things I pointed out, including some stuff that I would not mention yet. To my greatest surprise, when it was Tristan's turn to list out the things he did not like, he pointed out the fact that I liked to ask for overpriced items that cost thousands of dollars and were unreasonable. He accused me of not having a vision for the future and being obsessed with useless trends, and then he called me selfish for changing my attitude towards him just because he didn't give in to my reckless demands. He even went as far as saying I had no emotional intelligence and that I liked to think about myself only instead of taking note of how he included me in his future and present plans, yet I never did the same. His words really pierced my skin and made me sick to the bones, because I just find it hard to understand why he would say such hurtful things to me. I felt attacked and rushed because he made me look stupid. I honestly believe that he basically called a meeting just so he could accuse me of those hurtful things. I did not agree with a single thing he said, and I felt like he was just trying to pin his limited financial capabilities on me. I would like to ask you guys a very important question, though. Do you think that I am at fault in any way? Do you agree with what Tristan said because I just do not agree? And I told him the exact same thing. I tried to walk out, and then Tristan suddenly got angry and said this. This is the exact thing you always do. You said things you hated about me, and I did the same thing, and now you're walking out. We're here to see how we can do better and adjust our characters to fit each other's perspective, yet you want to walk out. Those words made me even angrier, so I walked out. I refused to talk to Tristan for nearly a week after that day, because I just couldn't bear the thought of being called selfish, because I am 100% sure that I am not selfish. He tried to speak to me severally, but I ignored him, and at some point he gave up. If you were in the same space with us during that time, you could tell from a mile away that we had unresolved issues and that there was a lot of tension. It got so bad that even after we started speaking, things were so awkward and our conversations were short-lived. I expected him to apologize to me because I believed that he was the one who hurt me with his words, but that never happened. At some point, our friends and even family noticed that there was a fire on the mountain in our marriage, so my friends planned a 5-day get-together for our friend group. I knew deep down that Tristan and I had to be the reason for the trip, but I had no choice than to attend. I didn't want people to start talking, especially our female friends. Some of them had gotten married to rich men, and some were dating men that made questionable money, like the kind of money you were scared to spend because you had no explanation for it. I honestly felt like in the friend group, I was the one with the least man. Yes, I felt that way, and I don't think that's a wrong ideology. I have eyes, and with the comparisons I made in my head, I had the least designer shoes and bags. So what is the essence of the marriage if I wasn't living my dream? I have to go now because I need sleep, lol. I'll make an update on the get-together and how it has ended up with my marriage in shambles soon. I've been writing for so long and I'm literally tired. Update. Guess who's back with an update, y'all? I hope you all have been well, and I hope you slept better by insulting my character and calling me all sorts of names. The way people judge is so crazy. I wanted to make an update 2 days after the first one, but the negative comments held me back for 4 months. I got so depressed, coupled with the divorce that was suddenly thrown on me. People really need to learn to be nicer, but whatever. I don't think my words would make a difference anyway. I stopped at the preparation if they get together, so I'll start from there. I didn't want people to laugh at me, so I decided to go for the get-together, and Tristan was also convinced to go. The first 3 days were drama-free until the last day. I mean, Tristan and I were good at hiding our issues and acting like nothing was wrong until I made a statement at the barbecue date we were all present at. Everyone was there with their partners, and we were supposed to grill ourselves for the experience. The females in the friend group were present with their husbands or boyfriends, and the males were present with their wives or girlfriends. Things were going well until the men decided to do a grilling competition where they tested each other's abilities to see who was better at grilling. I was utterly surprised to see that Tristan wanted to compete too, and he even went as far as boasting of winning. That got me really embarrassed because I believed that the other men who must have more money and are not workaholics like him would know more about grilling since they definitely went to more parties, unlike Tristan who attended fewer parties due to work. I didn't want him to lose and then automatically embarrass me, so I decided to save both of us the stress by saying he should step back and let the real men do the grilling. All I said was, "Tristan, just step back and let the real men do the grilling. We both know you don't grill that well." I meant it as a joke that would convey meaning to him so he would step back, but Tristan's facial expressions instantly turned dark and angry. Everyone noticed the bad blood, stopped what they were doing, and watched us. I could tell that Tristan was embarrassed and angry, but I prayed silently and hoped that he would just control himself and not embarrass me. But to my utter surprise, he said this: "This is just another reason to file for divorce from you. You're honestly the worst wife any man could have. I regret proposing in the first place." And then he walked out. I was so embarrassed that I wanted the ground to open and swallow me, but none of that happened. I could see the judgment on everyone's face. I could tell that they took his words seriously and probably thought I was a useless wife. Just like that, everyone left one by one and left me to myself. When I got back to our room, Tristan was nowhere to be found. I didn't have the courage to go back home, so I went to my parents' place. I was too embarrassed to stay for the last day of the get-together. I also discovered that Tristan blocked me on all platforms. I was so devastated that I didn't know what to do. Some of our friends said he was filing for divorce, and that's why I panicked and ran here for advice. But can you believe that 4 weeks later he sent the divorce papers to my parents' place? Yes, I know going through a divorce now and my marriage is over. I tried everything, and even my parents and our friends tried begging him, but he said our marriage drained him and that I was too selfish to stay married. I've lost my husband and best friend, and now all that is left is memories. Please, I need to know, was I the cause of my own misery? I ran. Yes, you read that right. I ran away from home because I was so scared of what my husband of barely a year might do to me next. I overheard him talking to his brother the other day, and he was saying I said that I will be the best wife. And then 6 months later, I caught her in the act. But that wasn't what scared me. It was when he told him, and I quote, "I made her regret wasting my time, and I will still do more, it's a promise." Hello, Redditors. My name is Hannah, and I'm still married to my husband of barely a year, Dave. Well, that's probably because he doesn't know where I am presently, because I would probably be divorced, or worse, locked in the house and being done to worse things than he had done before. So let me explain from the beginning. I know you all think it's my fault, but at least hear me out. I grew up with my aunt and her family because my father had died in an accident when I was barely 10 years old, and since then, my mother had never been the same. She became so cold to me and didn't even mind that I was there. She would just stare into space. When she recovered from the shock of losing her husband, my father, she started to travel around, saying she wanted to explore the places she and Dad had promised each other they would and never got to. I guess that was her way of getting over the loss of Dad, and I was comfortable with that because at least she wasn't the same woman sitting in one chair for hours, refusing to eat and asking for Dad all day. Well, not until she brought home a new husband. Apparently they had met on one of their trips and gotten married after barely 2 months of knowing each other. Mom refused to let me to live with her new family. She said she didn't want any reminder of Dad, and because I looked so much like him, she was always reminded. Thinking back now, I think keeping me far away from her was her own way of avoiding the guilt of moving on so quickly from the man she claimed she loved. So I was stuck with my aunt and her family. They didn't like me that much either, and showed it every chance they got, especially my cousins. I was the ugly, fat mutton in the family who, no matter how little she ate, still ate too much. And because I got my looks from Dad, I wasn't exactly what you'd refer to as pretty. I was beautiful, but just not enough. So I grew up feeling very insecure. Having boys go after my cousins instead of me, the bullying I endured at school and home wasn't fun either. The most painful thing was watching my stepbrothers and sister do the most bullying because, according to them, they cannot believe they have someone as ugly as I was sharing the same mother as them. I grew up feeling I had to please to receive even a bit of affection. My aunt only smiled at me when I did everything she asked without making a mistake. Sometimes I even got a thank you, and that was like I received an I love you. Contrary to what you might think, I was never beaten. It was mostly emotional abuse. I wasn't allowed to study far away from home like other kids who got to make their own choices, even my cousins. I had to help my aunt and uncle with the house chores, so I went to the community college and still lived with them. It was in college I met Austin. Austin was my first boyfriend. He was my first too. I mean sexually. But I was so naive and stupid I didn't know he was just using me. I was a bet between him and his friends. I was really devastated, and I promised myself that I wasn't going to be used again. The first thing I did after finishing up college was leave the house and even that town. It was a new me, a different me, a me that wasn't intimidated by anyone anymore, a me that wasn't going to get used and dumped again. The second thing I did after leaving home was get a job and then a gym membership. I worked myself crazy trying to get the body I desired. Soon enough, I was being disturbed by boys. The attention I wanted so desperately, I was beginning to get them, and I was happy for a while. In fact, I dated guys, and when I became bored, I dumped them. And still yet, I wasn't satisfied. I wanted something more, and I didn't know what. 2 years later, I was called and told my aunt had died, and I should come home. I hadn't wanted to go at first, but I felt they should see the new me, that changed me, so I went. Not because I missed the woman, but because I didn't even have any close relationship with her. I loved the look of surprise on their faces when they saw me. I was happy because it was obvious they were uncomfortable with the new me, mainly because I had to have a say in everything they did and dared anyone to argue with what I had to say. They were used to the old me who agreed with everything and anything and was comfortable being out of the lights. Even after the burial, I decided to stay back for a while just to make them all uncomfortable. My step-siblings were back home and my cousins too, who decided to settle there when they had finished college. I began to get all the attention from boys, and even the ones that had laughed while I was being bullied. It pleased me when I had the chance to say no to their faces. Well, that was until my cousin Natalie brought home her boyfriend Dave. Yes, you read right. My husband used to date Natalie, my cousin. He had missed the burial ceremony because he had been caught up with work and couldn't squeeze himself out of it. Dave was really the most handsome guy I had ever seen. His long, wavy hair was stylishly cut and stopped at his shoulders. He had the aura of a powerful and strong man, and he wasn't even from around our town. It made the girls envy Natalie for getting lucky with her man, especially me. The way he treated Natalie like she was a piece of glass that would break if placed wrongly, and the way he stared at her like she was the only woman on earth for him, made me very jealous and angry. I felt Natalie didn't deserve all that love and attention because she wasn't exactly the nicest person to me. Though when her siblings had insulted and mocked me, she had mostly just ignored the whole thing but never said anything bad to me. But at that point, I counted it as also being as mean as those bullies were. She could have at least defended me against them. Instead, she ignored it and never said anything about it. I wanted all she had, and that all specifically being Dave. I was already obsessed with Dave even while he was with Natalie. I Google searched him, found his net worth, his family, and everything I could get my hands on. Oh, and more pictures of him. My laptop was filled with everything of him. Even my phone wallpaper was a picture of him shirtless. I didn't get a chance to talk to him though, as Natalie was always around. And because she was always there, he didn't even notice me no matter what I did. I was getting really frustrated, especially because Dave planned to leave in a week's time, and Natalie was going with him. I wanted Dave at all costs, and all I did was get no results, but an opportunity presented itself to finally break Natalie and Dave apart. Since I grew up with Natalie and her siblings, I knew she had a friend, Matt, who had always been in love with her. I knew because, for someone who had always wanted some sort of attention, I know when I see one-sided love. Natalie never noticed, though. For all she cared, he was just the boy next door, nothing more. I remembered this because I had seen Matt staring wistfully after Natalie and Dave as they were strolling one day holding hands. I had seen him because I was also doing the same, but behind the curtains. So when I had seen Matt, an idea formed in my head, and I began to devise means of making it into reality. I quickly became friends with Matt and was always discussing Natalie and Dave with him, telling him how Dave didn't deserve Natalie because he didn't even love her and was just pretending with her. I told him that he, Matt, deserved her more, and if I were him, I would seize the opportunity and confess my love for her and save her from getting married to a man that didn't care about her. Having known Matt from childhood and having crushed on him at some point and given up then, because I realized he only had feelings for my beautiful cousin, I knew Matt to be someone easily convinced. He changed decisions as fast as expert race drivers changed gears because of peer influence. He even at one time joined the bullies before stopping. The only surprising thing that didn't change over the years was his feelings for Natalie. Matt was easy to manipulate, so that obviously made my evil plan much easier. I had told him that Natalie liked him, but the only reason she didn't date him was because he wasn't firm and didn't know what he wanted. I put it in his head that if he wanted Natalie to stay back and marry him, he would have to be firm and refuse to cower when confessing his feelings to her. In fact, I even helped him plan the time and location for the whole thing, and even helped him practice his lines. When I was sure Natalie was about to leave the house, I bumped into her and used that opportunity to take her phone. I quickly texted Dave, pretending to be Natalie, to meet him at the lake, where Natalie was meeting Matt, in 20 minutes, and then I deleted the message. I knew that Natalie couldn't leave the house without her phone, so when I saw her coming back, I dropped the phone where we had bumped into each other and ran to my room. I know what you all think of me now, but I clearly wasn't using my head. Okay, maybe I was, but for the obvious wrong reasons. I didn't mind then, as long as I got a chance with Dave. I didn't care that I was hurting Natalie, Matt, or even Dave. All the new me wanted was what she wanted, damning all the consequences. So the whole thing panned out the way I wanted, even more than I expected. Dave had gone to meet Natalie 20 minutes later, and when I saw him leave the house, I followed him, saying I was going along that path too to meet up with Matt, my own boyfriend, which was obviously a lie because Matt and I were never together. So we walked along the path silently, and when we got there, I was even surprised at how everything played out. Matt was kissing Natalie, and even though Natalie was trying to push him off, he was on her too strongly. Her hands were on his shoulders tightly, and his own hands were on her face, forcing her into the kiss. But I guess Dave misinterpreted the situation and just left angrily, and of course, I followed him. He angrily packed his bags, and I knew that if he left, I might never get my chance again. So I cried and begged him to take me along because I was upset too, and had nowhere to go, and I couldn't watch them both together. Dave fell for my sob story, and he took me with him. It was one of the happiest days of my life because I achieved my aim. I got to be with Dave, and Natalie was no longer in the picture. Natalie called several times trying to find out what was wrong, but Dave didn't take her calls, and when I eventually had the chance to get access to his phone, I blocked her and then deleted her contact from his phone. 2 weeks of beautiful bliss staying with Dave in his penthouse. I ensured we got close, and when I eventually got the chance to, I made sure we had sex. Because of that, we started dating. I wouldn't exactly call it dating now because it was more of me clinging to him and exploiting him and ensuring we had sex more often than normal. It was my way of keeping him grounded to me. Later, I started pestering Dave for marriage. I wanted the assurance that I had him, and I knew that was the only sure way to have the assurance I desperately sought. I even promised that I was going to be a good wife and that he wasn't going to regret marrying me. So he did. I was so happy I finally got my wish. He didn't even propose grandly. He merely agreed for me to go ahead with the wedding plans and that he was going to pay for everything. I was so happy, and I made sure I invited my family to my wedding, especially Natalie. I planned everything, from the designs of my wedding cake to my wedding invites, and especially my wedding dress. I made sure to choose the most expensive and gorgeous dress in the mall. I wanted nothing short of perfect. On my wedding day, I was surprised to see that Natalie actually showed up for the wedding. In fact, she was pregnant and with Matt by her side. She even thanked me for convincing Matt to actually confess his feelings because after Dave had stopped taking her calls and eventually blocked her, which was me, but she didn't know that, she had gotten comfort from Matt. Before she knew it, she had already developed feelings for him too, and now they were expecting a baby together. She had so much happiness radiating from her, and pregnancy did look good on her. I felt a pang of jealousy because I had obviously invited her there, so she could see that I actually ended up with what she wanted. After the wedding and the whole thing, work duties came, and Dave had to travel more often than usual, and I was mostly left alone. I wasn't working, so I literally had nothing to do other than just sit around, scroll through social media, or go shopping and buy even things that weren't necessary. I thought maybe if I spent too much, Dave would at least pay some sort of attention to me, but that never happened. Whenever we spoke, his only way of answering, whenever I told him how bored I was to tell me to go shopping and buy anything I wanted. I was getting very bored with my life. Dave was only around twice a week, and that was definitely not enough for me, so I decided to pick up a hobby. Since I wasn't such a great cook, I decided to pick up a popular and really expensive cooking class that I saw online. The day I was to start the cooking class, I was expecting to see a female coach, but to my greatest surprise, it had been a guy, a very handsome one at that, who made all the ladies, even the ones that were evidently married, sighed in lust and gush over how handsome he was. I was one of them. I mean, the evidently married women who sighed in lust, but I didn't join in gushing over how handsome he looked. I kept that to myself. I was there to learn how to cook better, so whenever Dave was around, we could eat homemade meals instead of ordering, or going on dinner dates. I wanted to do something special for us, and that prompted the action of registering for the cooking class. Adam, the name of the handsome cook, was a very good coach, probably because every woman in that class were willing students. Everyone worked hard to get the simple yet unique recipe he taught for making omelets just to get a good job, and a smile that seemed to light up his entire face whenever he did smile, probably because he had the deepest dimple I had ever seen. I continued taking his class for the rest of that week, but I wasn't exactly comfortable anymore. His stares and his obvious efforts to stand beside me and check on what I was doing were making me make lots of mistakes, and I wasn't entirely happy, so I decided to confront him about it. After the cooking class that day, when I had of course made a silly mistake of adding sugar instead of salt inside the eggs to make my omelets, he taught us throughout that week different methods of making omelets and helping us perfect our skills in making omelets. I waited behind to see him. I explained how I felt to him, thinking he'd understand, and maybe even apologize for making me feel uncomfortable with his stares and all that. But what he did then surprised me. He moved even closer to me and asked me if it really made me uncomfortable, to which I mumbled a yes. He then asked me if I wanted a one-on-one class with him so he could help me stop making those mistakes and even be better than the other ladies in the class. The alarm in my head went off at that moment, but the thought of being better than others, of course, overrode it, and I ended up saying yes to the class. He picked the following Saturday for the one-on-one class and told me we couldn't use his workplace and had to use somewhere else for the cooking class. So I suggested my place, and he agreed to come over. The week he was supposed to come over on Saturday, the stares reduced, and he refused to stand over at my place. At first, I was relieved because that meant I could get comfortable and cook easily, but by the third day, I wasn't too happy when he stood beside Joanne, an unmarried lady who didn't bother to hide the fact that she liked him. She was always trying to ask him questions and laughed out loud so we could know that Adam was paying her attention. She would even grab his arm, obviously to feel his biceps, but would come up with excuses about how she was really confused about how she was going to do anything she did. I was becoming more irritated by the little play they had going on. But then again, I was bothered because I was wondering why I was bothering myself because of an ordinary cook. So before it was even Saturday, I found myself wanting to be around him more and thinking about him more often than usual. At first, I dismissed it as just normal admiration, but then I started getting irritated by Joanne's very obvious attempt to flirt with him. When Saturday came, I was so excited that I, in fact, woke up early and started to count down the hours of when he'd show up. When he eventually did show up, I couldn't even hide my excitement at seeing him so much that I hugged him when he entered. Under the pretense of making food, we started to really flirt, and for some crazy reason, I enjoyed it. The following week, after the classes, I would stay back under the pretense that I had something important to ask him about the classes. Sometimes, we would go for lunch or dinner together, and on Saturdays, he was always at my place teaching me how to cook better. There was one time that Adam had been with me, and, as usual, we were playing around with food and laughing. We had a silly food fight, and he had come closer and held my waist to prevent me from flinging more food coloring at him. I had been laughing so hard, I had not even noticed that Elliot, my husband's personal assistant, had entered the room. He had come to pick up an important document for my husband and was looking for me so I could give him the needed permission to enter my husband's study and look for it. He had heard me laughing, so he followed the sound of my laughter, and it led him straight to the kitchen. I was shocked when he cleared his throat, and I quickly moved away from Adam, looking like a rabbit caught in the headlights of a car at night. I had gone with him to the study after quickly dismissing Adam, so I could perhaps get some time with Elliot to plead with him not to tell my husband whatever he saw. One funny thing happened. Not exactly what you'd call funny, but I wasn't exactly expecting it. I stylishly questioned Elliot about what he saw while he searched my husband's study for the documents, and the way he answered made me quite suspicious. I knew jealousy anywhere I saw it, and I smirked. Elliot had a thing for me, and a ridiculous idea formed in my head. I know. I regret everything now, even more as I write this. Somehow, writing this, remembering how I ruined my marriage and my own life, makes me feel worse than I already do. I walked towards Elliot and then kissed him. He had been caught unaware by the kiss, so he just stood there blinking and looking at me, visibly shocked at what had happened. I smiled and asked him if he hadn't wanted that all along, ever since Dave brought me home. While wrapping my hands around his neck, leaning in for another kiss, I told him that I had always wanted him too. I was just too in love with Dave to see anyone else then. But that wasn't the case anymore. It was partially true. Elliot had the body build of a bouncer, and somehow he looked dangerously sexy in a suit, because most times it felt like his body was trying so hard not to tear through the suit. He wasn't exactly as handsome as Dave or even Adam, but he had a nicely shaped face, so mostly I just liked him for his body build. One time, out of boredom, I had found myself thinking about him and how crazy sex would be with that body of his. Elliot obviously believed me, and he groaned before kissing me again, roughly this time, like a donkey starved of water from traveling through a desert. We had sex right there, in my husband's study. I know what you all must think of me, but I had no choice. I had to keep him quiet about what he saw and not go telling my husband, even after he promised me he wouldn't. I knew having sex with him would probably be a more effective way of shutting him up. Sex with him wasn't all that great, though. Ugh. As I typed that, I felt like a really big-time sex addict, which I'm really not. But I guess after cheating on my husband with his personal assistant, there's really no excuse I can give for that. Elliot, of course, left after having sex with me, with the document he came for, and with a promise not to mention what happened between him and me, or with Adam to my husband. I hadn't even had sex with Adam yet, though I imagined it, but the timing hadn't been perfect. I knew instinctively that if Elliot hadn't walked in the way he did, I would probably have had sex with Adam right there on my kitchen floor. My husband came back home the next day, so I couldn't go to my classes because I wanted to spend time with him. Regardless of how much I cheated on my husband, I still loved him. Otherwise, why would I have even slept with Elliot to keep him quiet and avoid ruining my marriage in the first place? We were 4 months into our marriage and we barely saw each other, so I guess craving his attention had me developing a new me that wanted to have fun and just not be bored, a new me that I wasn't particularly happy about. But you know what they say about going too far to even look back? That was my situation at that point. When Dave was with me at home, I was the happiest. He asked about my hobbies, and I told him about the cooking class, of course, omitting the parts about Adam coming to teach me at home. Dave was very interested in what I had to say and listened carefully as I talked about how I had been filling my days without him. He was the most attentive husband, and throughout the 4 days he was home, I was treated more like a princess than anything else. He took me out on dinner dates, went with me to see some artifacts that I've always been curious about, took me on a tour around his company, and told me more about his work. We even made a quick stop at his parents' place to say hi. He had always been a family man. His aunties, uncles, nieces, and nephews were everywhere, and whenever he wasn't busy, he was there with them. The way he carried and attended to each child there had me wistfully thinking about my own non-pregnant status. I was thinking that perhaps if I became pregnant, maybe Dave wouldn't travel so much, and I wouldn't have to resort to other means to get rid of my boredom. Seeing as we were only a few months married and I was already left to my devices almost all the time, I thought if I was even pregnant, maybe I wouldn't be so bored either. Preparing for a baby was a lot of work, and I would be too tired to even look at another man or go to any cooking classes. Dave had to make another important trip again after we left his family's house, and I was left alone again by myself. The next day was a Saturday, but I called Adam to invite him over that Friday, and he promised to come over when he was done with work. When he came over, I didn't even bother to pretend to have a cooking class first. I just invited him to my bed. We finally had sex, but it was pretty much disappointing. I wasn't even into it at some point, and I had to fake an orgasm. Adam, clearly satisfied that he finally had sex with me, the one thing he'd been dreaming of, laid beside me on my matrimonial bed and slept off. I knew that there was only one man who could touch me and make me feel special, and it was my husband. It just felt like I was reaffirming it by sleeping with 2 different men. I knew instinctively that I couldn't continue Adam's classes or sleep with him again, so I decided that after he woke up, I would stylishly dismiss him, but he wouldn't know it was a total dismissal. I was in the kitchen still thinking through everything when Adam woke up. He walked behind me and started kissing my neck and back. I had to drop the mug of hot coffee I held so I wouldn't burn myself, and I turned in his hands with the intention of pushing him off. But immediately I turned, Adam started kissing me. I was going to push him off. In fact, my hands were on his shoulders trying to do so when I heard something drop to the floor. I quickly pushed Adam off me and turned to see my husband with his personal assistant right behind him. I was so shocked. How do you explain a naked man in your kitchen with you wearing only a t-shirt, kissing you hours after your husband left home? Adam ran to our bedroom, picked up his clothes, and was trying to run out, but Elliot had locked the door while making a phone call. He called the police and told them there was a thief in the house. Oh, and believe me, because of the influence that Dave had, Adam slept very soundly with mosquitoes in his ears for a month in the cell. When he was back out, Dave had made calls and he was officially left jobless. Dave didn't want to hear a word I said, and no matter how much I pleaded with him, he still didn't want to hear me. The first thing he did was block my credit card. Then he made sure I couldn't step out of the house by employing female bodyguards to watch me. When he employed them, right in front of them, he had mockingly said to me that at least I couldn't sleep with them since I seemed to like sleeping with employees. Yes, he found out about Elliot. Apparently there was a CCTV in his study, and when he had locked himself indoors, after finding out about my affair with Adam, he checked through it and found out about Elliot too. Elliot joined Adam in the cell, and they both were rendered jobless with ruined reputations, which I'm sure will put them out of good jobs for years. Another thing Dave did was take my phone away. I literally had no contact with the outside world as I was locked inside the guest room all day, since Dave kicked me out of our room. All I saw were the guards he employed when they came with food and water, most of which I barely touched. I was slowly losing my mind being inside that room with nothing to do except reflect on the things I had done. I didn't even get to see Dave at all. I would mostly just hear his voice across the room whenever he made business calls. So that particular day, I overheard Dave and his brother talking, and I heard because Dave had a deep voice, and especially when he was angry, his voice usually deepens, and therefore making you hear anything he had to say, even if he thinks he's whispering. That was the case that day. He wasn't exactly whispering, but he wasn't talking loudly either, and he was telling his brother about my sins. But what he ended up with made me shiver and so scared. He had told his brother that, I will be the best wife. 6 months later, I caught her in the act. I made her regret wasting my time, and I'll still do more. It's a promise. I just knew I had to escape the prison my husband had put me in. A promise to do more? I wondered what that doing more would be. I know Dave would never hit a woman, but there were worse things than hitting a woman, like what he had already started doing now. I was going crazy, so when I had the opportunity, I just ran with no money, no clothes, except the one I had on me, and nothing at all. I know it's a matter of time before Dave finds me, but right now, all I want to do is just know how I could get back what I stupidly lost. I love Dave so much, and after everything I did to get him in my life, I still stupidly lost that. I desperately need your advice on what to do and how to get Dave to forgive me. Please help me. Update. Hello, Reddit. It's been 3 days since I ran away from home. I don't even know exactly where I am. I mean, I do know, but I meant mentally. While running, I was hit by a lovely couple who took me in and gave me shelter and food and a warm bed to sleep in. They probably don't know what I've done because they would have sent me packing as fast as they can. I'm currently using the wife's phone to make these posts. The funny thing is, I've read people's stories on this particular app, and I felt I couldn't relate because why would a woman love a man and still cheat on him? In fact, I used a fake account that I created to write demeaning comments on their posts. You'd think I'll learn from their own stories, but I didn't eventually. I just went ahead and did the same thing. Even something probably worse than they did. I feel so disgusted with myself. I cannot believe I lost the one thing that mattered to me most in the world. I cannot believe I cannot coexist anymore in the same space with Dave. I know I'm not even worthy of doing that. I lost that chance when I decided to sleep with not just one man, but 2 different men. I know without a doubt that through the duration of our short marriage, Dave was faithful to me, despite all his traveling and despite the fact that I wasn't the one he was in love with in the first place. He learned to love me during the time we were together, and I went ahead to ruin that with my own stupid actions. Stupid, stupid, stupid. That's apparently the new title name I have for myself. I cannot even bring myself to face Dave, to apologize properly for what I did to him because even I myself cannot seem to forgive me. I feel so ashamed of myself. All I do now is cry myself to sleep. The couple I stay with have asked severally what the matter was, but I cannot even bring myself to tell them because I know I might become homeless and out on the street again. I see them get all cuddled up and whisper sweet nothings to each other's ears, and my heart constrains painfully against my chest because I imagine what life would have been like with Dave. I would probably be pregnant now, and I can only imagine the sheer joy on Dave's face if he got to know I was pregnant because of his love for kids. But I lost that. Now all I can do is just sit still and imagine the what-ifs. My future looks so blank without Dave in it, and I feel suicidal sometimes, but I'm too much of a coward to end it. And besides, I know the only way I could atone for my sins is by surviving and living and reliving the pains and hurt I caused Dave. It's crazy how life can be. You think that you have it all one minute, and then the next, you don't have not even one thing left. I could have done things better. I could have made better decisions, but I let my greed, stupidity, and desire control me. In my head, I thought I was just trying to relieve the boredom, but in reality, I was just ruining myself. The painful thing is, the people I even cheated on my husband with weren't worth it. They weren't up to my husband's status, and I didn't even get to relieve the so-called boredom I had. I've read and heard stories of women who cheat because of material things, or because their husbands maltreat them, and I still judge them to have done better to get their marriage back on track. But what name do I give myself for cheating because I was bored? At least those women that I've read and heard of that cheat on their spouses are usually 10 or 20 years of marriage. Some even give 5 years. But what can I say of myself when I cheated barely 7 months into my own marriage? I cannot even excuse myself. I feel very disgusted and ashamed of myself for what I've done to Dave. Update. Hello, Reddit. This is my last post here, and I just wanted to express my thanks for being able to express myself. Not that it made me any better, but because I got to share my own story regardless that I had come here at first seeking advice on how to get my man back. But now, even I know how impossible that is. It seems Dave knew where I was all along because I got my luggage and divorce papers where I stayed. I had to sell all the clothes and buy cheaper ones. I couldn't bear to look at them all because they remind me more than I'm already reminded of what I had and lost. I wish, well, I can't even wish because that right belongs to people who deserve it, and I don't. I sincerely hope, even if it's not everyone, at least someone out there learns from my story and does not think it wise to cheat on their spouse. Thanks and goodbye.